From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Yeah, last summer I saw certain spots where oil would pool up on the beaches, on the shores, and we saw cleanup crews every day. In my opinion, done a good job.
It's as good as it's ever been. I've been here since 1991, and I've never seen our beaches look better.
I honestly kind of expected our beach to be messed up for a while and really to see the effects of it, but I mean, it's nice and clean, as you can see.
So says BP. 4 years after BP's Deepwater Horizon drilling platform exploded and killed 11 workers, causing more than 200 million gallons of oil to spew into the Gulf of Mexico, the Environmental Protection Agency has lifted a ban that excluded BP from new federal contracts. In a broadcast exclusive, we'll speak with Elizabeth Birnbaum, who was director of the Minerals Management Service in the Interior Department at the time of the Deepwater Horizon blowout. She left soon after. She now says the risk of another blowout is real. Then Reuben Hurricane Carter has died. He became an international symbol of racial injustice after spending 19 years in prison for a wrongful murder conviction.
This is unreal. This is make-believe. This is what I sat in the cell 20 years, hoping upon hope it would finally happen. This is a dream come true. I've never had a dream in life that have not been realized. Never yet. And that simply shows that whatever we are limited on this earth simply by our own imagination. Whatever we can believe, man, can be. There's nothing that we can't do. Nothing.
Hurricane Carter's ordeal was publicized in Bob Dylan's song Hurricane in a film starring Denzel Washington. We'll speak with John Artis, Reuben Hurricane Carter's co-defendant and friend who cared for him until his death in Canada. And with Ken Klonsky. He co-wrote Eye of the Hurricane, My Path from Darkness to Freedom. Nelson Mandela wrote the foreword. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Obama administration has again delayed a decision on approval or rejection of the Keystone XL oil pipeline. The State Department says it'll await the results of legal challenges to the pipeline's proposed route through Nebraska. That means a final move will not likely come until after the midterm elections. It's now the third consecutive year the White House has put off a final ruling on the Keystone XL's fate. The pipeline would carry tar sands oil from Alberta to the Gulf Coast. Environmentalists say that would unleash a devastating amount of carbon into the atmosphere. An anti-Keystone XL protest is slated for Washington, D.C. later this week when a coalition of ranchers, farmers, and native groups stage Reject and Protect, a week-long encampment on the National Mall. Dozens of people have been killed in 2 consecutive days of U.S. drone attacks inside Yemen. Around 15 people died Saturday when a U.S. missile hit a road in the central province of Al-Baida. Between 3 to 6 civilians were killed, while the rest were described as suspected al-Qaeda militants. On Sunday, about 25 people were killed in 2 U.S. attacks on southern areas. The victims were also described as suspected al-Qaeda militants. Another drone attack was reportedly carried out earlier today, but details are unclear. Violence broke out in eastern Ukraine Sunday, days after the truce between Kiev and Moscow. At least 3 people were killed when a shootout erupted at a checkpoint in a town controlled by pro-Russian separatists. The truce calls for the disarming and withdrawal of armed groups under international supervision. But a top separatist leader has said his forces are not bound by the deal, and little movement has been seen so far. At the White House, National Security Advisor Susan Rice appeared to suggest the U.S. could target Russia's oil and gas sector if it's deemed to violate the truce.
There are other potential ways in the framework of our executive orders that we could impose costs should that be necessary. In the event of a dramatic escalation or significant escalation, including, as we've said repeatedly, the potential for Russia to move its own forces on the border inside of Ukraine, that those costs and sanctions could even include targeting very significant sectors of the Russian economy. But beyond that, I'm not going to be specific.
At least 33 people were killed Sunday in violence across Iraq. Bombings claimed at least 18 lives, while clashes in Fallujah left at least 15 dead. Iraq is due to hold parliamentary elections early next month amidst its bloodiest period in 6 years. The latest figures show enrollment in private health plans under the Affordable Care Act has topped 8 million. The nation's rate of uninsured is now at its lowest point since 2008, and a Gallup poll shows up to 12 million people have obtained coverage since the fall. At the White House, President Obama touted figures showing over 1/3 of enrollees are under the age of 35 and that premiums will cost 15% lower than predicted.
I find it strange that the Republican position on this law is still stuck in the same place that it has always been. They still can't bring themselves to admit that the Affordable Care Act is working. They said nobody would sign up. They were wrong about that. They said it would be unaffordable for the country. They were wrong about that.
Federal immigration policies coming under increasing resistance at the state and local level. On Friday, Maryland announced it'll no longer automatically hold prisoners at the request of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. The federal government has used the program's Secure Communities to get local police forces to hand over immigrant detainees for potential deportation. The Baltimore City Detention Center says it'll now grant those requests only if the prisoners have been charged with or convicted of a serious crime. Baltimore's shift comes after similar moves in Philadelphia and Oregon. Sheriffs in 9 Oregon counties now say they will not comply with federal immigration detainers at all. The decision came after a state judge ruled an immigrant detainee's rights were violated. She was held for 19 hours after she should have been released so federal agents could take her into custody. The military trial of 5 alleged 9/11 conspirators could be in limbo amidst allegations of FBI spying on the defense team. FBI agents questioned a contractor working as a security guard for one of the suspects' lawyers earlier this month. The contractor was forced to sign a confidentiality form, a move attorneys say turns him into a de facto informant. The military judge overseeing pretrial hearings has opened the way for an inquiry. Prosecutors had hoped for jury selection to begin early next year, but the defense says the trials could now be delayed until 2017. Attorney James Connell said only one person appears to have come under FBI questioning so far.
Our preliminary investigation leads us to hope that it may be confined, that we may have nipped this in the bud just after it started. Is that going to turn out to be true? I don't know. But so far, we don't have information that the investigation has spread beyond Mr. bin al-Shaiba's defense security officer.
The spying allegation follows previous claims by the attorneys that Guantanamo prison officials have monitored their communications. Residents of a South Carolina town are rallying behind a fired police chief whose supporters say was targeted because she's a lesbian. Crystal Moore had never received a single reprimand in 20 years on the job. But Mayor Earl Bullard dismissed her earlier this month after suddenly handing down 7 reprimands in a single day. Bullard has been caught on tape making anti-LGBTQ remarks, saying he would rather have a drunk person care for a child than someone who is gay. Dozens of residents flooded a city council meeting last week demanding answers for Moore's firing. Moore said there was no explanation for her firing.
I can't believe that we still have no equal rights. That's the biggest issue. I've been harassed, intimidated, and this is the first time it's ever been this public. I have tried to live a decent, quiet life and do what I'm supposed to.
A group of Alabama prisoners reportedly staged a work stoppage this weekend in protest of conditions at their prison. The Free Alabama movement says it called the strike at the St. Clair County Correctional Facility in Springville, Alabama, to call attention to overcrowding, health violations, and a work system that forces them to conduct free labor. It's the prisoners' second strike this year after a work stoppage in January. A federal judge has cleared the way for a landmark case against several major corporations accused of aiding South Africa's apartheid regime. Companies including Ford and IBM are accused of complicity in human rights abuses during the years they did business in apartheid South Africa. The rule was filed by black victims of white minority rule. They are suing under the Alien Tort Claims Act, which allows foreigners to file cases against companies for crimes committed abroad. In a ruling last week, District Judge Shira Shinlin rejected the company's claim that previous rulings shield them from suits. And the celebrated boxer and prisoner rights activist Reuben "Hurricane" Carter has died at the age of 76. Carter became an international symbol of racial injustice after his wrongful murder conviction forced him to spend 19 years in prison before he was exonerated. Since his release, Carter championed the cause of wrongfully convicted prisoners. We'll have more on Reuben "Hurricane" Carter's life later in the broadcast. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.